My mother tried to trade me for money. 10 years later, I knocked on her door with an offer. My name is Gabriel. I was born in the back room of a faded yellow house on the edge of Sao Paulo's outer districts, where the city's heartbeat turns from neon to shadows. My earliest memories are made of peeling paint, my mother's thin arms, and the smell of stale beer that clung to her hair when she tucked me in on the rare nights she bothered to. When I was 6 years old, she tried to sell me. It sounds harsh, I know. But for her, it was just another transaction, another desperate reach for an escape. She never wanted a child. She told me that often enough, sometimes through slurred whispers, sometimes through the sharp crack of a slap when I asked for things she couldn't give. She called me her mistake, her burden, her punishment. But I was too little to understand what any of that meant. To me, she was just May, and I loved her anyway. One night, I remember it vividly because I'd stolen a handful of hard candies from the corner store the day she came home with a man I'd never seen before. He was old, with a white shirt too clean for our neighborhood and shoes that didn't crunch on the gravel in our yard because he stepped so lightly, like a cat. They argued in the kitchen while I hid in my room, licking the last candy, pressing my ear to the thin wall. 5,000 now, 5 later, the man said. His voice was calm, oily. That's nothing for a boy, she hissed. He's young. Healthy. Pretty face. Pretty face, the man repeated, and laughed like he was complimenting a pet. You're lucky I'm even offering. You know how many brats are out there? Street kids for free. I didn't understand the words, not then. But I understood my mother's silence. The kind of silence that made the floorboards creak under her pacing feet. Then her voice, low, trembling, 5 now. 5 later. Something broke inside me. And you take him tonight. I didn't cry, I don't think I had any tears left. When they came into my room, I pretended to be asleep. I felt her hand on my shoulder, felt her lift me, not gently, but like a bag she was too tired to carry. The man stood behind her, watching. But life has a funny way of denying even the worst people their plans. Outside, under the flickering streetlight, the man reached for me. My mother shoved me forward, I stumbled, hit my knees on the concrete. He grabbed my arm, but in that moment, a neighbor's door opened. Old Dona Celeste, nosy, drunk on cheap wine, and blessedly suspicious, shouted from her porch. Hey! Were you taking the boy? The man froze. My mother hissed at Celeste to mind her business. But Celeste had a phone in her hand, waving it like a weapon. I'm calling the police, she screamed. She didn't, of course. But the man let go of me. He stepped back, his shoes silent on the gravel. My mother cursed, tried to pull me to her, but Celeste was already stumbling over, reeking of sour wine, dragging me behind her. You stay with me tonight, Menino. I'll call someone. Get inside. That night, my mother spat at me through Celeste's window, eyes wild, hair a mess. You ruined everything, she screamed. You worthless little bastard. It was the last time I saw her for 10 years. She was old, alone, and the neighborhood gossiped enough that eventually a social worker came to pry me out of her cramped living room where I'd been sleeping on a mildewed couch. I remember clutching Celeste's hand when they put me in the back of a police car. She pressed a handful of crumpled bills into my palm. Don't forget you're worth more than she ever thought, she whispered. I didn't believe her, not yet. The system swallowed me. I bounced from shelter to shelter, some better than others, some nightmares that I'd rather burn out of my brain. The nights were the worst. Other kids, tough kids, hungry kids, taught me how to fight, steal, lie. By 10, I could pick a pocket clean in a crowded bus. By 12, I knew which dealers paid best for small errands, which cops could be bribed to look away, which corners were worth standing on and which ones could get you killed. But I also learned to listen. To watch. To wait. I didn't want to be like them, not exactly. I didn't want a gang, a corner, a gun tucked in my waistband. I wanted something bigger. I wanted a door that opened when I knocked, one with my name on it, not hers. I didn't think of her much. Or I told myself I didn't. In truth, every time I saw a woman with hair like hers, with that same thin, frantic smile, I felt something twist in my gut. Anger, maybe. Or hope, though I hated to admit it. One night, when I was 16, I was running with a boy named Leandro, lean, fast, eyes like a fox. We boosted a fancy car from a rich neighborhood, joyriding through the city, radio blasting. For a moment, I felt untouchable. Free. Then the sirens came. Leandro panicked, swerved, crashed us into a cement divider. He didn't make it. I did barely. Lying in a hospital bed, bruised ribs screaming, I realized that if I stayed in this life, I'd end up just like him. Dead before I could ever find out who I really was, more than a mistake, more than her burden. I got out. It wasn't easy. Nothing good ever is. I found a halfway program run by a wiry old ex-priest named Father Raphael. He saw something in me I didn't see in myself. He gave me work in the shelter's kitchen. At first I stole from him, 2 food, petty cash, blankets I sold on the street. He caught me, once, stuffing bills into my shoe. He didn't shout. He just looked at me and said, "You are not her son anymore. You are yours." That stung more than any slap ever did. I stuck around. I learned to cook, to clean, to read people's moods in the tilt of their shoulders, the twitch of their eyes. Father Raphael taught me how to read books, to real books, thick ones with words that tasted like freedom on my tongue. He taught me how to talk like someone who belonged in rooms with locked doors. He taught me how to make people listen. By 18, I had papers, a small apartment, and a job in a restaurant. Not much, but mine. Sometimes, when the night was quiet and the city's roar faded to a hum, I'd pull out an old piece of paper I'd stolen from the shelter office, my birth certificate. Her name on it. Mine. A connection I'd never asked for but could never cut. And I started thinking. What would she say if I knocked on her door now? What would she want if she saw the son she'd thrown away, standing there, taller, stronger, sharper than she'd ever imagined? What would it take to make her pay? People think finding someone is easy now, a name, a few clicks, a street address pops up like magic. But she was the kind of woman who lived in the cracks. She never held a job for long, never signed a lease in her name. Her boyfriends, the ones I could trace, were all ghosts, too. Men with half records and nicknames. Some were dead. Some might as well have been. I started with what I knew, her old neighborhood. Celeste was gone by then, the house abandoned, the porch collapsed under weeds and rain. I stood in front of it one night, remembering the night she saved me. If Celeste hadn't opened her door, I'd be long gone now, buried under someone's lies. I found a kid squatting inside. His name was Mateus, 15, high out of his mind, barely skin and bones under a dirty hoodie. I gave him a sandwich and a cigarette. We sat on the broken porch steps, listening to stray dogs bark at the moon. You ever hear of a woman named Rita? I asked. He shrugged. Lots of Ritas. This one thin, sharp face, hair like straw, voice like a chain-smoking crow. He barked a laugh. Sounds like half the moms in this barrow. I gave him $50 anyway. He thanked me, vanished into the dark. It went on like that for months. I scraped together bits and pieces, old rumors, a police report about a bar fight, an eviction notice. Her name popped up and disappeared like a rat under floorboards. But every scrap made the picture clearer, she hadn't changed. She'd just grown older, meaner, drifting from man to man, debt to debt. One night I tracked down an old boyfriend of hers. Marco, if that was his real name. He was half passed out on a bar stool, staring into a glass of pinga like it owed him something. I sat next to him and asked, Rita. Where is she? He didn't look up. Why you wanna know? That made him laugh, a sharp, I'm her barking son thing that turned into a coughing fit. He wiped his mouth with the back of his hand, smearing snot across his wrist. She got lots of sons. Ain't none worth shit. I ignored that. Where? Marco leaned close. I smelled stale sweat, cheap liquor, and hopelessness. She's with some guy now. Joe Azinho. Thinks he's a big shot. Running numbers for the wrong people. They're laying low by the docks. He coughed again. I left him there, dropped a note for the bartender to cover his tab. I didn't care if it bought him another night to drink himself dead. I had what I needed. The docks at night are a different city. The air tastes like salt, rust, and broken dreams. Cargo crates stacked like tombstones, stray dogs sleeping under flickering lamps, the water black and silent. I found the building easy enough, an old warehouse someone had half turned into cheap flats. The door was warped metal, half painted over graffiti. I stood there for a long time. My hand hovered over the door. I told myself I'd rehearse this 1,000 times in my head, on the bus right here, staring at my own reflection in the cracked windows. But when you're really there, heart drumming in your throat, you realize how flimsy your plans are. I knocked. A dog barked inside. I heard a woman's voice, sharp and familiar even after all these years, the same rasp that once hissed hate at me through Celeste's window. Who is it? I didn't answer. I knocked again, louder. A chain scraped. A deadbolt turned. The door cracked open just enough for her to peer out, one suspicious eye under stringy hair dyed a shade that tried too hard to be blonde. When she saw me, she froze. The door didn't open further, didn't slam shut, just stayed there, wedged in a moment neither of us knew how to fill. Gabriel, she rasped. My name on her tongue sounded like an insult. I nodded. She looked me up and down, my clean jeans, my black jacket, the scars on my knuckles she didn't remember giving me. She looked past me, like she expected cops, a debt collector, an old ghost. You shouldn't be here, she said finally. I know. What do you want? I smiled. It wasn't a warm smile. To make you an offer. She let me in, mostly because she was too curious not to. The place was worse than I expected. Peeling paint, mold creeping up the walls, a broken TV propped on a crate. A mattress in the corner with blankets piled like a nest. Empty bottles everywhere, cheap vodka, cheaper wine. A dog, ribs showing, sniffed my shoes and whined. She sat on a crate herself, lit a cigarette with shaking hands. She didn't ask me to sit. I didn't need an invitation. You look like him, she said finally. Who? Your father. I ignored that. I'd learned not to care about men who vanished before I could walk. She sucked on her cigarette like it was the only thing keeping her alive. You come to play family now? After all these years? Want to cry, tell me how I ruined you? Get in line. I didn't flinch. I didn't come to cry. I came to give you money. That got her. Her eyes flickered. Hunger. Greed. The same look she gave that man 10 years ago when she tried to sell me. How much? I reached into my pocket and pulled out an envelope. Thick, stuffed. I tossed it onto the crate next to her. She stared at it like it might bite. What's this? A down payment. For what? I leaned in, close enough to smell the stale smoke on her breath. For you to disappear. She laughed, short, ugly. Disappear? From what? From my life. For good. I'm buying your silence, your absence, your promise to never show your face again. She stubbed out her cigarette, lit another immediately. You think you can pay me to forget you? I already did that this time. I know you. So here's the real deal, you take this money, you sign a paper I brought, and you leave the city. You never come near me again. No surprises. No knocking on my door when you burn through it. If you do, there'll be no second envelope. Just the kind of people who don't ask twice. Her laugh caught in her throat. She knew I meant it. Maybe she saw the boy she tried to sell, all grown up into a man who wouldn't flinch at burying her memory for good. She reached for the envelope. Her fingers trembled. She flipped it open, thick stacks of clean notes. More money than she'd seen in years, probably. Enough to buy her poison for a while. Enough to disappear if she had half a brain. She looked up at me. I couldn't read her face, a flicker of something soft, almost maternal, but it died before it reached her eyes. What if I say no? I leaned back, stood up. I loomed over her like the ghost I was. Then I walk away now. And next time we meet, you won't like who's with me. She knew I wasn't bluffing. She taught me how to lie. She knew when I wasn't. She lit a third cigarette. Nodded once. Where's the paper? I pulled it from my jacket, a single page, typed neat. She didn't read it. She just signed her name, a jagged, desperate scribble that gave me what I wanted. She didn't ask for a hug. I didn't offer one. I left her sitting there, staring at the envelope like it might vanish if she blinked. Outside, the air tasted like freedom and rot, the docks always smelled like both. I thought that would be the end of it. But people like her don't stay bought for long. The paper was signed, the envelope gone, the door closed behind me. For a week, I felt lighter than I had in years, like I'd finally scraped her shadow off my skin. I went back to my life. My little apartment, my spotless kitchen, the long hours in the restaurant where I'd climbed from dishwasher to sous chef. In the hush of the prep room, I could almost forget where I came from, who I came from. I built something real, brick by brick, knife cut by knife cut. No favors. No debts. No ghosts. And yet, ghosts don't stay dead just because you say so. It started small. A call at 3 a.m., no voice, just breathing. Then a rumor, someone asking about me down in Villa Madalena, showing my old shelter photo to people who owed her drinks. Then one night, after closing, I found my apartment door cracked open. Nothing stolen. Just open, like a reminder. I knew it was her. I knew the look of her poison. She'd burned through the money faster than I thought. Liquor, dice, the wrong men. Maybe Joe Azinho, the small-time thug she clung to like an anchor, wanted more than I'd given. Maybe she thought I had more to spare. I went to the docks again, but she was gone. The old landlord swore she'd vanished overnight. Left behind a stained mattress, an empty dog bowl, and a stink that wouldn't want to come to me. So I looked for the man instead, Joe Azinho. Rumors said he ran errands for a mid-level boss who liked his loyalty but laughed at his stupidity. Joe Azinho was mean, but not clever. Dangerous enough to do something dumb if someone whispered the right promise in his ear. I found him in a bar off Avenida Cruzeiro do Sol, the kind of place that smelled like cheap beer and broken knuckles. He was easy to spot, squat, broad shoulders, a grin that never reached his eyes. A girl half his age draped over his arm, bored out of her mind while he bragged about jobs he'd never done. I waited until he stumbled out alone, patting his pockets for cigarettes he'd already smoked. I stepped out of the shadows. He flinched, squinted, tried to place me. I didn't give him time. Where's Rita? He blinked at my voice, piecing it together. Then he grinned, wide, yellow teeth. Ah, the golden boy. The prodigal son. She said you'd come. She's been talking, then. He shrugged, spread his arms like a cheap magician revealing empty sleeves. What's a mother to do? She says you owe her. Says you got rich off forgetting where you came from. I stepped closer. He smelled like sweat and rum. She's wrong. And if you're smart, you'll let her rot wherever she crawled off to. His grin faded. Thing is, she's got debts. Big ones. People are asking. They hear she's got a son who turned fancy. They ask why he can't help pay. I felt it then, the old rage, boiling up from the pit she left in me. I leaned so close I could count the broken capillaries in his nose. If you come near me again, if she does, I'll make sure the next person knocking on your door isn't me. Understand? He laughed, a brittle sound. Threatening your own mother's man? She was right about you. Cold. Heartless. She taught me well. He spat on the ground between us. You can't bury blood, Gabriel. I stepped back. Weeks passed. Watch me. I thought maybe that was it, a final bluff. Maybe she'd find another fool to bleed dry. I threw myself into work, into the rhythms I understood, the hiss of oil, the chop of knives, the steam and salt that made more sense than people ever did. Then, one night, I came home to find her sitting on my stairs. No Joe Azinho this time. No dog. Just her older than I remembered, her hair a brittle mess, her eyes bright with something halfway between defiance and desperation. I froze at the bottom step, keys in my hand. Go home, I said. I am home, she rasped. She smiled, or tried to. My boy's got a nice place. Better than any hole I ever kept you in. You're not staying here. She hugged her knees, rocking a little. You think you're better than me. All cleaned up. Fancy watch. But you're still mine. Same blood. Same dirt. I climbed the steps slowly. Stood over her. She didn't flinch. What do you want? She looked up, her eyes glassy. Another deal. I laughed, sharp, humorless. What could you possibly have left to sell me? She reached into her jacket, a ratty thing that looked like it once belonged to a man twice her size. She pulled out a folded piece of paper. Held it like a prize. What's that? Your father. I stared. She smiled wider, showing teeth yellowed by years of cheap smoke and cheaper lies. You always wanted to know, didn't you? Who he was. Where he went. Why he left. She wasn't wrong. Somewhere under the walls I'd built, I did want to know. She saw that flicker in my eyes and pounced like a vulture. You pay me again. And I give you this. I shook my head. You don't even know where he is. I do. He wrote me once. Said if you ever came looking, he'd talk. He owes you that much. But he won't open his door for a stranger. I knelt down, face level with hers. I smelled the rot in her breath. She shrugged a twitchy, fragile gesture. I'm tired. I'm old. I need enough to get out. Far out. Away from Joe Azinho, the debts, the rest. You give me that, I give you him. I should have said no. Should have turned my back, called the police, locked my door forever. But that hunger she fed me my whole life, the hunger to know, it clawed through my ribs. How much? She named a number. Less than last time. She was desperate now, and she knew I could smell it. I told her to wait on the stairs. Went inside. Came back with a second envelope. Thinner this time, enough to buy her bus ticket to nowhere, enough to shut her up for good. She snatched it like a rat finding bread. Handed me the paper. I didn't open it while she watched. She started to say something, maybe an apology, maybe another curse. I didn't give her the chance. I closed the door in her face. I waited until I heard her footsteps fade. Waited longer, just in case. Then I sat at my tiny kitchen table and unfolded the paper. A name. An address. A note, scrawled in her jagged script. He lives in Curitiba now. Says he wants to meet you. Says he's sorry. Sorry. The word felt like a joke in my mouth. I read the name again, Mauricio Azevedo. No father on my birth certificate. No stories growing up. Only this, a stranger's name on a slip of paper from a woman who'd sell her own son for a bus ride. I didn't sleep that night. I sat at the table until dawn, the paper pinned under my palm like a threat. By morning, I decided I had to see him. Not for her. Not even for him. For me, for the last piece of myself I hadn't stolen back yet. Didn't tell anyone at work. Didn't tell Celeste she'd moved out of the city years ago, but we still talk sometimes, enough for her to know I turned out okay. If I told her what I was doing, she'd tell me to stay home. Some wounds were better left to rot underground, she'd say. But I needed to see him, to see if the ghost she'd sold me for was any realer than she was. The bus ride to Curitiba took 10 hours. I stared out the window the whole time, counting the mile markers like they might turn back into years I'd lost. The landscape rolled by green hills, cracked highways, gas stations where I bought stale coffee I didn't drink. At the terminal, I stood in the crowd with my small duffel bag, the paper folded tight in my pocket. My phone buzzed with missed calls from the restaurant. I didn't answer. I rented a cheap room, peeling paint, a ceiling fan that rattled like loose bones. I didn't unpack. I just showered, stared at my reflection in the cracked bathroom mirror. Wondered if I'd see him in my own face. The same eyes? The same mouth? Or nothing at all? At dawn, I put on my cleanest shirt, tied my boots tight, and stepped to a neighborhood that pretended to be better than it was, old houses with fresh paint trying to cover the decades underneath. His was a squat single-story place with barred windows and a cracked driveway. I stood at the gate for a long time, the street quiet behind me. Dogs barked somewhere down the block. A woman sweeping her porch watched me like she knew I didn't belong here. I raised my hand. Not once. Twice. I expected him to open the door. But it wasn't him, it was a woman. Middle-aged, tired eyes, hair pulled into a tight bun. She sized me up in one glance, like she was good at sorting out threats from beggars. Yes, she said, her voice careful. I'm looking for Mauricio Azevedo. Her eyes narrowed. Who's asking? I took out the slip of paper. Showed her the name like it was proof I wasn't lying. I'm his son. Something flickered in her eyes, not surprise, exactly. More like recognition of an old secret finally knocking too loud to ignore. She stepped aside. Smelled like disinfectant and stale bread. Clean but lived in. Photos on the walls, birthdays, holidays, faces I didn't know. None of me. Of course not. She led me to a small sitting room. The furniture was old but polished. A clock ticked too loud. In the corner, an armchair faced the window. When I stepped closer, I saw him. Mauricio Azevedo. My father. Older than I expected, white hair combed neat, a thin blanket over his legs. His hands rested on the armrests, fingers tapping like they were keeping time with that relentless clock. He turned when he heard me. His eyes were bright, sharp blue, so clear it startled me. My eyes, in his face. He smiled, small, careful. Gabriel? I nodded. My throat felt tight. Yeah. The woman hovered behind me, her hand on my shoulder for a second, a gesture of comfort I didn't deserve. Then she left us alone. He spoke first. I wondered if you'd ever come. I didn't sit. I stood there like a kid waiting for detention to be over. How did you know I might? He sighed, a soft, whistling sound that made his shoulders drop. Your mother, she called me once. Told me you were alive. That you'd made something of yourself. She wanted money, of course. Of course. He chuckled, a bitter edge. I sent it. Not for her. For you. But I knew she'd keep it. I didn't answer that. The silence stretched. Outside, a bus rumbled past. Somewhere, a dog barked again. Why'd you leave? I asked finally. His eyes drifted to the window, the street beyond. Like he could see the years he'd lost out there. I was young. Stupid. Your mother and I, we were poisoned together. I thought, if I stayed, I'd drag you down with us. I thought leaving was mercy. I laughed, short, sharp. How'd that work out? His mouth twitched, not quite a smile. Not quite regret. I heard what she did. To you. I wanted to come back. I didn't know how. By the time I tried, she'd vanished. And so had you. You could have looked harder. Didn't flinch. I know. Didn't make excuses. That almost made it worse. I sat then, in the chair across from him. My legs felt heavy, like I'd been carrying this weight forever. I don't want money, I said. He nodded. Good. I don't have any. That made me snort, surprised myself with it. He almost smiled again. I just want to know, I said. Why me? Why didn't you try harder? Why didn't you pull me out when you knew what she was? He looked so tired then, so much smaller than I pictured. Because I was a coward, he said, plain as that. Because I thought you'd be better off not knowing me. Because I was wrong. No excuses. No lies. Just that. We sat in that stale room for a long time. He asked about my life, my job, Celeste, the tiny apartment I called mine. I told him. Not all of it, not the dark corners. But enough. And when the clock ticked past noon, I stood up. He didn't ask me to stay. He didn't beg for forgiveness. He just nodded, like he knew this was all he'd get. At the door, he said my name. I turned. You're a better man than I ever was. I didn't know what to say to that. So I didn't say anything at all. I took the bus back that same night. Watched the city light smear across the window like ghosts refusing to fade. I thought seeing him would fill the hole she left in me. It didn't. But it made the edges softer somehow, made the question smaller. He was just a man. Flawed, weak, human. Like her. Like me. When I got back to Sao Paulo, I stood in front of my apartment door for a long time. Half expecting to see her on the steps again. But she was gone for real this time, I hoped. I unlocked the door. Went inside. Sat at my kitchen table and watched the dawn creep across the tile. Strange, too quiet, too normal. I went back to the restaurant, tied my apron, yelled orders at the line cooks like nothing had changed. But I knew it had not in some grand way, not like a wound healed overnight. Just quieter. Like a tooth you finally stopped tonguing because it stopped hurting. At night, I'd lie in bed and replay the way Mauricio looked at me. The way he didn't beg me to forgive him. That, weirdly, was what made it easier to breathe. He didn't want to be my father, he just wanted me to know he existed. That he'd messed up. That he'd owned that until the day he couldn't. A part of me wished I could hate him. It would have been cleaner. But hate needs fuel, and he didn't give me any. He was just an old man in a dusty chair, half broken by his own choices. So I got up every morning. I worked. I saved. I didn't hear from her, no calls, no drunk messages, no half-baked threats. I half expected Joe Azinho to show up again, but if he did, he didn't find me. Sometimes I'd walk by the old shelter where Celeste found me. It was a community center now, bright murals on the walls, kids playing football out front. I'd stand across the street, watch them run, laugh, scrape their knees and get back up. I'd tell myself that was proof people could make something better out of nothing. Proof I hadn't wasted all the ugliness I crawled through. It was 6 months later, a cold night, drizzle in the air, the smell of wet concrete seeping through my open window when she came back. I heard the knock just after midnight. 3 sharp raps, then silence. I knew it was her. I don't know how, but I knew. I didn't open it right away. I stood on the other side of the door, forehead resting against the cheap wood, listening to her breathe. She looked finally, the last I turned the knob. Thinner, skin gray and slack, eyes darting past me like she expected someone to drag her off at any second. She didn't have a bag. Just a plastic grocery sack clutched to her chest like it held her last lungful of air. Can I come in? She rasped. I should have said no. I wanted to say no. But I stepped aside. She sat at my kitchen table, same as always, like she belonged there. She pulled a bottle of cheap cachaca from the bag, set it between us like an offering. I didn't touch it. She poured herself a shot in one of my coffee cups. Her hands trembled so bad she spilled half of it. She didn't wipe it up. Joe Azinho's dead, she said. I didn't react. I didn't care. She took the shot, wiped her mouth with the back of her hand. They came for him. The ones he owed. They asked me questions. I told them nothing. They took everything anyway. Why are you here, Rita? She flinched when I used her name. Like she wanted me to spit out me instead, some shred of power she could cling to. I got nothing left, she said. Her voice was raw, like old cloth tearing. No one laughed. Just you. I laughed, couldn't help it. You sold me for beer money. Twice. You have no right to sit here like I owe you anything. She slammed her hand on the table, weak, but sharp enough to rattle the empty cup. You're mine. You're my son. Blood's blood. No, I said. Calm, cold. Blood's just blood. I'm not yours. Not anymore. She glared at me, and for a second I saw the woman I remembered, sharp, vicious, teeth bared to tear through anything that got too close. Then she crumpled. Her shoulders sagged. She looked so small I almost felt sorry for her. Still cooking? She asked after a long silence. Her voice was softer, like she was trying to peel my anger off with honey. You still got that fancy kitchen job? Yes. She nodded, eyes darting to the stove behind me. Like she was trying to measure how much of it she could claim. Good. You got money, then. I didn't answer. She took that as a yes. She leaned in, conspiratorial. I got an idea. One more deal. I stared at her. I don't want your deals. She grinned, the old predator peeking through. You will. Listen. I still got something. Information. Connections. Things Joe Azinho left behind, names, accounts, people he ran errands for. Dirty money, Gabriel. Enough to start something real. You think I want to launder money for you? She slammed the cup down again. No. I think you want freedom. A real chance. You play it right, you take what I know, you make yourself rich. No more scraping grease off plates for rich people who'd spit on you if they knew where you came from. I just looked at her. This wreck of a woman offering poison in a prettier bottle. And what do you get? I asked. She shrugged. A cut. Enough to get out. Really out, this time. Another country. A fresh name. A chance. I laughed again, this time there was no humor in it. You think I'd trust you? After everything? She reached across the table, grabbed my wrist with bony fingers. Her nails dug into my skin. You got no choice, Gabriel. They'll come for me next. And when they find out about you, you think they'll care you didn't take a cut? You think they'll care you hate me? She leaned closer, her breath sour and hot. You don't get to outrun me, son. I looked at her really. You never did. The ruin of her. The echo of the monster I ran from 1,000 times in my head. And I realized something, she was right about one thing. I'd never outrun her. Not really. But maybe I could bury her for good, not with money, not with hate. With a door slammed shut that stayed shut this time. I pulled my wrist free. Pushed my chair back. She watched me stand, eyes wide, breathing shallow, like she could see the decision forming in the shape of my mouth. I've got a proposal too, I said. She sat back, wary. Yeah? What? You walk out that door. Right now. You don't come back. Ever. You don't call. You don't send anyone. You disappear. She barked a laugh, hoarse, desperate. And you give me what for that? Another envelope? I shook my head. Nothing. You get nothing. She lunged forward, voice rising. You can't do this to me. I'm your mother. No, I said. Soft, final. You're not. I opened the door. She stared at it like it was a cliff she'd have to jump off. If you're still here when I come back, I said, I'll call the cops. And I'll tell them everything Joe Azinho did. Everything you did. I'll watch you rot in a cell if I have to. For the first time in my life, I saw fear in her eyes that wasn't mine to carry. She stood. Picked up her plastic bag. Clutched it like armor. She didn't say another word. She just shuffled past me, out into the hallway. I watched her go down the stairs, into the rain. I didn't sleep that night. She didn't look back. I stood by the window, watching the street for hours, half expecting her to crawl back up the steps like a cockroach. But dawn came and she didn't. I don't know where she went. I don't want to know. I cleaned the kitchen after, scrubbed the table, washed the cup she drank from, wiped her fingerprints off my doorknob. Like I could erase her. I know I can't, not really. She'll always be there, in the shape of my mouth when I snarl, in the parts of me that don't know how to let anyone close. But she's not here. Not anymore. That's enough. For now, that's enough. After she left, the days felt longer, not in a bad way, but in that strange stretch of time when you've pushed something out and there's empty space where the poison used to live. I'd wake up, cook for strangers who didn't know my name beyond chef or hey you. I'd ride the bus home, pockets greasy with tips that barely paid rent. But it felt different. Cleaner, maybe. I didn't tell anyone about her last visit, not Celeste, not the cooks who sometimes stayed late to drink beer with me out back by the dumpsters. It wasn't their story. It barely felt like mine anymore. I half expected the men she owed to show up at my door, thugs with cheap pistols and cheaper questions. But days turned into weeks, and the knock never came. Maybe they found her. Maybe they didn't. Maybe she really did vanish for good this time. Or maybe she was out there, spinning the same old story to someone else desperate enough to believe her. Sometimes I caught myself thinking about her face that last night, how small she looked, how the rain clung to her hair like a crown of broken threads. I'd feel that old guilt bloom in my throat, but it never stayed long. Guilt needs love to stick. I bled that dry a long back into the world. She showed up one night at the restaurant, same sly grin, same old black curls now streaked with gray she wore like a badge. She sat at the bar while I worked the line, nursing a cheap beer like royalty. You gonna feed me or make me watch you sweat all night, she called over the clang of pans. I plated her something off-menu, seared fish, rice, pickled vegetables I'd made that morning. She tasted it like she was judging a cooking show, then shrugged. Not bad. Just not bad? She raised her beer. Better than what I had back home. I came to see if you'd finally made something of yourself. I made rent, I said. Mostly. She grinned. Good enough. We sat out back after closing, same cracked plastic chairs, same concrete wall stained with oil and secrets. Celeste smoked a cheap cigarette she bummed from one of the dishwashers. I just watched the smoke curl into the streetlights. You look tired, she said. I shrugged. Same as always. She flicked ash onto the ground. You ever think about getting out of this city? I laughed. Every day. She turned to me, eyes sharp in the dark. So why don't you? Because running costs money. And I've got enough to stay alive, not enough to start over. She stubbed out her cigarette on her boot heel. Funny thing is, I do. I looked at her, then really looked. What are you talking about? Celeste leaned forward, elbows on her knees like she was about to tell me the punchline to the world's meanest joke. My brother, you remember Enrique? Big guy, bad knee? I nodded. I'd met him once, he'd driven us home from the shelter when the bus didn't come. He's got this place down south. Beach town, quiet. He wants to open a cafe, little place, homemade food, nothing fancy. He asked if I knew anyone who could run a kitchen. She let the words sink in. My heart thudded once, hard enough I thought she might. I asked. There's 100 chefs in this city. She smiled, a real smile, warm and fierce. Because you're not just a chef. You're family. And you're too damn stubborn to die here like your mother wants you to. The word mother made my chest tighten, but it passed. I tried to picture it, sand instead of smog, fresh fish instead of frozen chicken, laughter instead of slammed doors. A small place, my name on the lease. A future that didn't taste like ashes. It's not charity? I asked. Celeste snorted. Hell no. He'll work you like a mule. But it's a chance. A clean one. I didn't say yes that night. I told her I'd think about it. She just laughed, hugged me so hard my ribs creaked, and told me not to take too long. I didn't sleep. Again. I lay on my mattress, staring at the water stain on the ceiling, trying to imagine what it would feel like to walk away, really walk away from the city that raised me like a feral dog. By dawn, I knew. I packed my knives first, the only things I owned that felt like a future. Then a bag of clothes. Some old photos, not of her, not of him, but of Celeste and me, leaning against the shelter wall one Christmas with paper crowns on our heads. I left the key on the kitchen counter. Took the bus to Celeste's tiny apartment across town. She was still asleep when I knocked. When she opened the door, I just said, "I'm in." She grinned. It felt different this time, right, not like running, not like hunting ghosts. More like leaving a husk behind. Celeste rode down with me. We shared a bus seat, our bags stuffed under our feet. She fell asleep halfway, head on my shoulder, mouth open in a snore that made the kids across the aisle giggle. I watched the road cut through fields and hills and small towns that didn't know my name, didn't care who my mother was or what she did. When we stepped off the bus, the air tasted like salt. The streets were quiet, just sand drifting over cracked pavement, the smell of the ocean wrapping around me like a promise. Enrique met us at the terminal. Big man, bigger laugh, arms that swallowed me in a hug I didn't know how to return at first. He showed me the cafe, a squat building painted blue and white, half-finished chairs stacked in a corner, windows open to let the sea sneak in. It wasn't much yet. But it would be. I could see it. I could see me in it. On my second night there, after we scrubbed the counters and unpacked crates of dishes, Celeste and Enrique sat with me on the back step. Stars overhead. The sea murmuring just beyond the dunes. Enrique asked me what I'd call the place, when it was mine to name. I thought about it, about names, about claims, about what you keep and what you bury. Then I said it. Simple, final. Freedom. Enrique laughed, clapped me on the shoulder. Freedom Cafe. Has a ring to it. Celeste raised her beer, clinked it against mine. To freedom, then. I know, and just like that, or maybe she's not. Maybe she's bones under a highway overpass, or a name whispered by drunks who don't remember her face. I don't care. Some nights, I stand behind my new counter, hands in soapy water, and I see my father's eyes in the glass. I don't hate him. I don't forgive him. He just was. Same as her. I tell myself that's enough. That what matters is who I feed now, kids Sandy from the beach, old fishermen who bring me their catch with a wink. Celeste yelling at me from the storeroom about the broken freezer. Enrique pouring cheap beer for locals who've already started calling me Chef Gabriel. That's my proposal to the world now, not revenge, not forgiveness. Just this, a kitchen that's mine, a door no one kicks in, a name no one can sell. That's enough. More than enough. The first morning the cafe opened, I didn't sleep at all. I stood behind the counter in the dark, listening to the sea whispering just outside the cracked window. Enrique snored on a camp bed in the back room. Celeste was still in her rented shack up the street, probably dreaming up new ways to boss me around. At dawn, I lit the stove. The gas hissed, the flame caught, and for a moment I half expected the whole place to explode. But it didn't. It purred, a warm, steady thing, like a heart beating in a ribcage. I made pão de queijo by hand, like Celeste taught me when I was 12 and hungry and she caught me stealing food from the shelter pantry. Brewed strong coffee that steamed the salt off the windows. By 7, the first old man shuffled in, Joao Pedro, a fisherman with hands like driftwood. He asked what was on the menu. I told him whatever I can make with what you bring me tomorrow. He laughed, took 2 cheese breads, left a crumpled bill that smelled like fish. It wasn't much. It was almost 3 weeks in when she showed up, not my mother, not Mauricio, but the ghost I'd been waiting for all along, the men Joazinho owed. They came at dusk, when the chairs were stacked, and Celeste was counting cash in the back. 2 guys in cheap sandals and knockoff football jerseys. One had a scar that cut his eyebrow in half. The other carried himself like he thought he was invisible until you looked him in the eye. I saw them through the window before they knocked. I didn't run. I didn't hide. I wiped my hands on a rag and opened the door. You Gabriel? Scarborough asked. I just nodded. He looked past me at the empty cafe, the smell of fresh bread still clinging to the walls. Nice place. Heard you got lucky. Family connections, yeah? My stomach went cold, but I didn't let it show. You want food, we open at 7. Scarborough laughed, a dry bark. We don't want food. We want what Joazinho owed. And your mother. Word is you know where she is. I shook my head. Haven't seen her in months. She's gone. In the ground? I hope so. Scarborough studied my face. His buddy drifted toward the back door, probably listening for Celeste. My pulse thumped, but my voice didn't crack. She's not here. She's got nothing to do with me. You're her blood. I hated that word more than anything. I'm not her anything. Scarborough smiled, yellow teeth, wet lips. Then you pay her debt. Or we take this place. Or we take something else. I stepped back, enough to let the streetlight catch my face through the open door. I wanted him to see my eyes. The part of me that was still a wild dog in a broken hallway. You're not taking anything, I said. You come back here, I call the police. You come back again, I call every dirty reporter in this town and hand them every story she ever told me about Joazinho's business. Your business. You want your bosses on the news? Try me. His grin faltered. His buddy hovered in the shadows, fidgeting. When they were gone, I locked the door and found Celeste in the back, counting receipts on the flour-smeared freezer. She looked at my face, at whatever she saw there, and slammed the cash drawer shut. Who was it? I told her. She didn't yell. Didn't flinch. She just sat down on an empty crate and looked at me like she was seeing a child she'd raised into something harder than she wanted. You should have let me answer the door, she said. They didn't want you. She snorted. You think that makes me feel better? I sat beside her, our shoulders pressed together in the warm dark. The fridge hummed, the sea whispered through the cracked vent. What do we do if they come back? I asked. Celeste shrugged. Feed them poison, bury them in the dunes. I laughed, sharp, sudden. She didn't. She meant it. Finally, she leaned over, pressed her forehead to mine. Her voice was so quiet I almost missed it. You ever think about leaving again, for good? I did. I do. But I shook my head. This is my place, I said. They don't get to take it. A week later, I found the old burner phone she'd left behind once, hidden at the back of my closet. I charged it overnight, half expecting it to burst into flames or leak secrets into my pillow. In the morning, I dialed the only number saved under May. It rang. Once. Twice. 4 times. Then her voice cracked, distant, older than I remembered. You finally ready to talk, she rasped. I'm ready to end this. A long silence. I heard wind. Traffic. Somewhere far from the ocean. What do you want, Gabriel? My cafe. My life. No shadows. No debts. She barked a laugh, same old ugly sound. And you think I can give you that? You can die, I said. Or you can run so far they never find you. If you come here, if you send them here, I'll drag you into the light. You think you're safe now, hiding behind Joe Azinho's ghosts. But I know things too. Another silence. Don't test me. Then just a whisper, like a curse, or a prayer. You're just like me. No, I said. I'm nothing like you. That's the point. I hung up. Pulled the SIM card. Crushed it under my heel. Threw the phone into the trash behind the cafe. And I never heard from her again. I wish I could tell you she's dead, bones washed out to sea, no one to mourn her. I wish I could say I'm untouchable now. That the men who came never came back. That I sleep easy every night with the ocean singing me to dreams. But life doesn't give you fairy tales. It gives you mornings. I wake up every day before the sun, light my stove, make bread for fishermen and kids and old men with driftwood hands. Sometimes I catch a glimpse of myself in the cafe's front window, a tall man with tired eyes and salt in his hair. Sometimes I see her in that reflection, a ghost behind my shoulder. But she can't touch me here. Not anymore. Celeste still calls me her boy. Enrique still jokes about teaching me to surf, even though we both know I'm too stiff, too stubborn, too much myself. They saved me. But I built the rest. Brick by brick. Cut by cut. Fire by fire. I don't know where she is. I don't care. I know where I am, in my kitchen, with my name on the door. And that's my proposal to the world. Take what they gave you. Burn what you can't carry. Feed the rest to people who come hungry and leave full. Live like nobody owns you. Die like you did it on your own terms. And never, ever knock on a door that should stay closed.